Alcatraz has always been more than concrete and cold water. It's been a riddle wrapped in razor wire, soaked in fog and legend. For decades, the world has stared at that jagged island in San Francisco Bay, asking the same question: did they make it? Now, in 2025, a new twist has surfaced, one so precise, so calculated, it's turning old assumptions inside out. But don't expect a tidy ending. This isn't about heroes or villains. It's about shadows, science, and a silent night that still echoes with secrets. What really happened beyond those cell walls? And how close have we come, until now, to finally knowing? Inside America's most secure prison, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, often referred to simply as The Rock, stood as a symbol of the U.S. government's most extreme approach to incarceration. Located on a small island 1.25 miles off the coast of San Francisco, Alcatraz was originally a military fort during the 1850s before being converted into a federal prison in 1934. Managed by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it was designed to house inmates deemed too disruptive or dangerous for other facilities. From its inception, Alcatraz was intended to be the end of the line, a maximum security, minimum privilege institution for the most incorrigible offenders. The prison facility itself was a feat of engineering and security. The main cell house, constructed between 1910 and 1912, featured 4 blocks of cells, a dining hall, a hospital, a library, and administrative offices. The cells were small, bare, and built with tool-proof steel bars. Prisoners were counted up to 13 times a day, and the ratio of guards to inmates was the lowest in the nation. Metal detectors, tear gas canisters, and armed guards in elevated gun galleries enhanced security at every turn. Access to privileges like work, visitation, and even talking during meals had to be earned, making daily life both strict and psychologically taxing. With its inmate capacity of about 312, Alcatraz rarely got filled to that total. It accommodated some of the known worst criminals, Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly. Super maximum offenders were dispatched to D Block, home to the Hole, some isolation cells infamous for inhumane conditions. It was a strictly racial segregation, with no rehabilitation intended, only control. There had been major upgrades in the functioning of the prison during its 29 years in operation, like the introduction of electrified fences, updated locking systems, and renovations to improve security in the 1930s and 40s. Alcatraz was closed down on March 21, 1963, mainly because of the high cost of maintenance and the dilapidated state of the buildings, owing to weakening saltwater corrosion. And yet, it is this legacy that captures imagination. Today, managed by the National Park Service as a museum, it has more than 1 million yearly visitors. Refurbished areas provide an introduction to what used to be deemed the toughest penitentiary in the United States, a stronghold where the thin lines separating punishment and survival often blurred. Its walls were strong, but its legend was even stronger, until one night changed everything. The myth of the inescapable rock Alcatraz wasn't just a prison, it was a symbol. Perched on a wind-battered island in San Francisco Bay, it came to represent the final word in American incarceration. Not just a place to serve time, Alcatraz was where the system sent inmates it had given up on. The prison's design, its isolation, and its relentless routines created a legend that escape was not only impossible, but unthinkable. That belief wasn't based on folklore, it was reinforced by statistics. Over its 29 years of operation, no one had ever been confirmed to have escaped. In 14 recorded attempts, most were captured or slain, with a few vanishing into the waters, presumed drowned. The treacherous tides, frigid temperatures, and sheer distance from shore made the bay itself an unbreachable final barrier. To attempt escape was, by most standards, to sign one's death warrant. This image, totally contained, was essential for Alcatraz. It was not just about locking people up, it was about annihilating any idea of escape. Guards, officials, and the public bought into the myth of the rock being impossible to escape from, and that myth served the prison's power. That power came under stress in June 1962. Sometime between 10:30 and 11 p.m. on June 11, 1962, 3 inmates were to get out of their cells and disappear: Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin. The escape caused an introspection. The moment Alcatraz was said to be outfoxed even once, it was taken off its pedestal. The psychological aftershocks were immediate. Once there had been a fortress, now there was only mystery. But this time, unlike others, the enigma lingered on. Now, the lack of a definite conclusion planted seeds of doubt, then fascination, and finally a tale grander than the prison itself. To this day, the 1962 escape is not merely an event. It is a fulcrum in the mythos of Alcatraz. The question of whether those men lived or died remains a mystery. What is known is that their very disappearance cracked America wide open from a myth she'd carried for decades. That crack in the rock allowed the legend to seep away. Frank Morris. The genius behind the plan. Frank Lee Morris was far from an average inmate. He was a seasoned criminal with a brilliant mind and a history of escapes, the kind of man Alcatraz was specifically built to contain. Orphaned at age 11 and convicted by 13, Morris spent most of his youth moving between foster homes and institutions. His early life of instability hardened him, but it also sharpened his instincts. With a criminal resume that included armed robbery, substance possession, and multiple successful escape attempts, Morris was transferred to Alcatraz in January 1960 after fleeing the Louisiana State Penitentiary. From the moment he arrived, he was already thinking about how he would leave. Once at Alcatraz, Morris was placed near fellow inmates John and Clarence Anglin, as well as Alan West, all of whom he had previously encountered during times served at other prisons. With their cells side by side, the men could whisper to each other at night, quietly forming what would become one of the most calculated escape teams in history. Morris naturally assumed the role of leader. His intelligence and prior experience escaping prison made him the architect of the plan that would ultimately shake the reputation of Alcatraz to its core. Unlike others who had tried and failed, Morris aimed for flawless execution. The group spent months hacking away at the salt damage of concrete beneath the vents under their sinks. They had stolen metal spoons, discarded saw blades, and homely built the drill powered by a vacuum cleaner to make holes in the deteriorating concrete material. Morris produced papier-mâché grills painted with stuff he stole from the library and maintenance shop to mask their activities. Even the sounds of their drilling have been dealt with. Morris played his accordion during music hour, using its wheezing sound to cover the noise from the digging activities. There is no improvisation here. Most definitely, there is planning, testimony that indeed Morris is tactically brilliant. The very act of breaking free was not merely a prison breakout, but rather a direct challenge to the myth of Alcatraz's invulnerability. By sewing together more than 50 raincoats into a 6-by-14-foot raft and life jackets, using hot steam pipes to seal the hunk of rubber, Morris and the Anglin brothers defied even gravity. They even converted a concertina into a makeshift air pump. They officially supposedly drowned, but no bodies were recovered, and 2013 letter contains some compelling evidence to the contrary. Whether Morris died in the bay or lived a secret life in hiding, his escape was undeniably the cleverest escape in Alcatraz's 30-year history, proving that even the rock could be cracked. The Anglin brothers John and Clarence Anglin were more than just two inmates serving time. They were brothers bound by hardship, loyalty, and a relentless desire to be free. Born into a poor farming family in rural Florida, they were part of a large brood of 13 siblings and grew up learning how to survive together. That bond of brotherhood became the foundation of their infamous escape from Alcatraz. Their lives of crime, mostly centered around bank robberies, landed them in the Atlanta Penitentiary, where their repeated escape attempts became such a problem that prison officials finally sent them to Alcatraz, the supposed end of the line for troublemakers. It was at Alcatraz that the Anglins were reunited with Frank Morris, whom they had met in earlier stints behind bars. The brothers were placed in adjacent cells next to Morris and Alan West, which allowed them to communicate and collaborate covertly. With Morris as the brains of the operation, the Anglin brothers became indispensable hands in the escape effort. Over months, they helped dig holes through decaying concrete, using metal spoons and saw blades. While Morris led the engineering side of the plan, the Anglins worked on logistics and concealment, making papier-mâché vent covers to disguise the holes and gathering materials from their prison labor assignments. That, too, basically helped them in preparing the escape equipment for their escape. They had also helped Morris prepare the life jackets and one gigantic raft of 6 by 14 feet